Point Pleasant, West Virginia. In 1966, this town was besieged by a 13-month-long paranormal attack.
Over 200 sightings occurred. The town was in panic. People were scared.
A mystery that started with Mothman.
It looked like a cross between a man and an alien with wings.
Became more horrifying than headlines ever revealed.
You had Mothman. You had UFOs. Then you had animal and cattle mutilations going on. And then you had Men in Black.
One man tried to put the pieces together, searching out the evil that had residents fearing for their lives.
Most of them were just bewildered. There were a few who were very afraid to go out of their house at night.
It would deliver him to the very brink of terror.
I began to see them myself. It was beyond imagination.
For the first time, the actual story behind one of the most popular accounts of the true paranormal. John Keel's The Mothman Prophecies. Keel's personal investigation in Point Pleasant revealed.
I suppose if there was a place where the monster could exist, the TNT area would be a perfect place for it. It's a maze of abandoned buildings.
TNT area back in that age was just a party place for kids. They could do bonfires back then, and it was just a dark, desolate area away from the city.
Two young couples who were hanging out in a lover's lane of sorts. One of the four people suddenly saw what looked like two big red bulbous eyes that had a penetrating kind of quality to them. It was some kind of creature, an immense bird, 7 feet tall. That was the first sighting of what would be called Mothman.
In West Virginia, where the Ohio and Kanawha River cross, sits the small town of Point Pleasant.
I believe that there is something very odd about this area, about this place. I also believe that a lot of the people who come from here, there is a dark cloud over them, no matter where they go.
I don't really know why everything is attracted to Point Pleasant, but Point Pleasant has had its share at times of a lot of bad things happening.
From November 1966 until December 1967, a string of bizarre monster encounters plunged this quiet industrial community into the grip of terror. Straight into this town-wide panic stepped a man with a lifelong quest to understand the mysterious. As a teenager in the 1940s, John Keel heard radio reports about flying saucers. It captured his imagination. Keel would grow up to be a writer, still fascinated with stories of the supernatural.
Keel's desire and passion was to kind of understand, the universe around him, especially when it comes to fringe phenomena.
In the mid-1960s, concern over UFOs and extraterrestrials had gone mainstream. Americans wanted to know the truth about what was out there. Investigating UFOs put John Keel on the road in 1966, heading from New York City into the rural South.
He got an assignment from Playboy magazine. He went up there. He started investigating it. He would interview people who had claimed either they saw UFOs or they were approached by aliens. And he didn't dismiss what they said out of hand. He would listen to what they said. And so in that respect, I think he was the first really thorough investigator of UFOs.
The search led Keel to the Ohio Valley, just as the story broke about a strange creature seen in Point Pleasant.
Do you know anything about these attacks?
Yeah, said these people got chased down by a giant black bat or something.
Really? Chasing them?
Yeah, over by Point Pleasant.
Keel made a beeline to Point Pleasant. Its gateway, the bright aluminum viaduct locals called the Silver Bridge. Point Pleasant would prove to be John Keel's greatest challenge.
He said, I come in for 48 hours. And he said, I got a job, it's been a decade. And he did.
5 reports so far.
5? Really?
Yeah.
The first thing John does when he gets to West Virginia is immediately
Can I help you, fella?
go to the local police
I'm a journalist. I'm from New York City.
to show his credentials so that they wouldn't think he was a total nut.
My name is John Keel.
Because, as you know, the UFO field is riddled with total nuts.
I was hoping to do some writing about the sightings that have been reported around here.
So you're here to make us look like fools.
Take it easy, Jim. Why don't I take responsibility for this gentleman while he...
Keel found a collaborator in Mary Heyer, a reporter that had already written about the strange sightings.
Okay, Mary.
I would say because Mary was well known and well liked, that's when a few people opened up their eyes and paid attention to what was going on.
You seen yesterday's paper?
Not yet.
I think they thought by Mary reporting it and knowing a few things about it made it more real to them.
She knew everybody in town. And by teaming up with her, I think he was able to be accepted much more readily than he would if he was an outsider.
There's something going on here.
How about you and I? We figure out what it is.
And they began to investigate the phenomena as a team.
Over the next few weeks, the dark-winged creature was seen again and again.
There were hundreds of sightings, all even up and down the Ohio River.
You had long hair when I met you.
Andy Colvin, born and raised in Point Pleasant, was 7 years old at the time of the sightings.
I was going with my parents, and we always took one route to the bowling alley. We would drive up the north side of the Kanawha River. At the time, I thought I had conjured it up in my mind.
Dad?
Mom and I are talking.
I saw Mothman flying behind our car.
Look behind us!
You want to fall or not? I'll turn us right around.
It veered off and over the carbide plant. It was a very strange time. There was a very oppressive thing going on.
With the town awash in rumor, John Keel and reporter Mary Heyer put the word out, asking witnesses to come forward.
And then all of a sudden, went right over the top.
It wasn't just one or two people, and it was every demographic. It was parents, it was teenagers, it was little kids.
Black shape coming to the horizon.
When the Mothman sighting started, and all of a sudden within the space of 2 months, 200 individuals in town say they've seen it, you're going to get a community-wide panic. And that's what happened.
They're scared.
There was something about these witnesses that couldn't easily be dismissed.
Everybody thinks of hillbillies when they think of West Virginia. They were not hillbillies. They were not the kind of people that would make these things up.
There must be 100 accounts here.
We can add one more to that.
Who?
My niece.
Together, John Keel and Mary Heyer went to interview Mary's niece, Christine, about her encounter.
How you doing, sweetie?
John Keel reported that
No, turn the lights off.
she was suffering from eye burn, very similar to something that someone would suffer if they looked at a welding torch without goggles.
Christine, this is my friend, Mr. John Keel.
A week earlier, 18-year-old Christine was on her way home from work.
I was driving home by the old golf course. Something just whooshed across the windshield.
Her heart was racing fast, and she thought, is that thing going to come towards me? Am I going to be able to get out of here?
In 1966, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, journalist John Keel stumbled into a town in full panic, terrorized by a series of mysterious encounters with a winged monster called Mothman. When Hollywood made a movie of Keel's account, the story was changed. The actual events in Point Pleasant were far stranger.
There wasn't anybody that didn't know somebody in town that had seen Mothman. That's highly concentrated pool of sightings and of eyewitnesses.
One of the first to report a Mothman encounter was the niece of local reporter Mary Heyer. When Keel found her, the young woman was traumatized, her eyes severely burned.
I was driving home by the old golf course.
She was working down at a little Chinese restaurant that we had, and she was going home. And in the open area where a golf course sits now, she said that she saw this figure.
Something just whooshed across the windshield.
Startled, she tried to regain her composure.
Her heart was racing fast, and she thought, is that thing going to come towards me?
She described the eyes as being glowing red, almost like bicycle reflectors. It was so overpowering to her. She drove away at that point in a pretty frantic state. John Keel reported that she was suffering from eye burn, so it really traumatized her.
Whatever she saw scared her to the point that she is an adult with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and she still to this day will not talk about it.
The attacks were clustered around an area at the edge of Point Pleasant, abandoned bunkers that once housed TNT explosives produced during World War II.
Well, the TNT area originally was a top-secret facility for making explosives. You could not go into that area at all, but then they let it become overgrown, and the buildings were abandoned.
If he was ever going to figure out what was tormenting Point Pleasant, Keel would have to challenge the creature on its own turf.
John Keel and Mary Hire went to the TNT bunker area with a group of around 5 people.
It's just an old rusty building. You guys ready?
I don't think I can do it. I'm scared. I'm with you. Let's go. Come on.
All right. Evil or not, here we come.
Y'all be careful.
Inside of the plant, John Keel looked around. All they had was his flashlight. It was around 9 p.m. at night.
What is that?
He wanted to try to experience whatever this was. John Keel actually climbed the catwalks and walked around and saw nothing. When they were going to leave, she turned around and immediately became frantic. She saw the glowing red eyes in the back of the factory. She was a wreck at that point.
What happened?
I'm going back in.
What?
The group was at a panic state, and they were trying to encourage John to leave.
If something is in there, I'm gonna find it.
John!
John went back in to investigate by himself, just to see if he could see anything that would reflect red from his flashlight. He asked to see things for himself. As soon as he hit the space again, an immediate feeling of fear overcome him. That's one thing he could not explain. The people on the outside heard a very loud metallic noise. They saw a humanoid figure.
I thought I saw something. Was that you?
No, I've been inside the whole time. What did you see?
Guys, my ear is bleeding.
After she had heard the sound, one of the lady's ears started to bleed. He said that what probably caused the ears bleeding was almost like a change in pressure, so that was kind of mysterious to him.
Let's go. Go.
In the days to follow, that first trickle of blood would turn into a stream of baffling, blood-spattered events.
There'd be lights in the backyard. The dogs in the house would go out to meet the lights, barking crazy. And then the next day they may find a dog with a slit in his throat and all the blood drained out of it.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen everything until I saw this.
In 1967, while investigating UFOs, pioneering paranormal researcher John Keel stumbled into something much stranger. Residents in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, were besieged by a mysterious winged creature known as Mothman. The terrifying encounters took an even stranger turn when dead dogs turned up drained of blood. Was Mothman on a blood hunt, or was the culprit something otherworldly? One night near Point Pleasant, 2 Red Cross workers driving a bloodmobile were headed south on Route 2. Their van loaded with fresh blood. bright flying craft forced them to stop.
Oh my God, what is that?
As it hovered, mechanical pinchers started lowering towards them. The UFO might have carried them off, but when headlights from approaching traffic appeared, they were saved. After Keel heard about the Bloodmobile incident, he tried knocking on doors, searching for any resident that may have had a UFO experience.
He was one of the first people to link what was happening up in the skies with what was happening on the ground.
Yeah, I thought I'd seen everything until I saw this.
Some cattle farmers in the area found cattle that had been mutilated. But mutilated is really not even a good word because these was surgical precision. The blood was drained in a very, very specific and strange way.
It's awful.
It's like totally laid open.
There's definitely something going on. Yeah. That was disgusting. It was hovering right above here, you said? Did you actually get a good look at it? Yeah, I did. And if you come over here at night, I mean, your lights are everywhere. You ought to come out here. Seriously.
By spring 1967, Keel was certain something phenomenal was building in Point Pleasant. For several nights near the farm at 5 Mile Creek, Keel and Mary Hire staked out a hilltop, hoping to communicate with the intelligence behind the UFO encounters.
John would carry with him a huge flashlight, and he decided he was going to try to start signaling to the crafts up there.
On April 1st, 1967,
I see it.
You see that?
I do.
They made contact.
What are you doing?
I'm going to try to communicate with him using Morse code.
What are you saying?
Telling him to descend.
John described the UFOs almost as if it was alive, almost if it was some type of creature itself. It was very intelligent in its behavior.
Did you see that? He responded.
If you flash a flashlight at them, they'd respond, they'd flash back. I saw a lot of these lights. In fact, I saw so many of them, I lost count.
I mean, has it been like that? Is it like right there? Look. It's almost like, no, it almost looks like it's red now.
Night after night, residents from across the valley came to the hilltop, hoping to see a UFO. And many of them did.
You see how bright it is? Weirdest damn thing I ever seen, man.
I was real skeptical about UFOs. I didn't think that was real. I didn't think it was possible. Till my brother seen one. He said it was the brightest light he ever seen.
I did spend a lot of time with Mary. She would say, let's go and see what we can see, and we would stay all night. She was hoping that whatever this was, that people would be fortunate enough to see it where she could write about it in more detail.
Is it like right there? Look. It looks like the bigger.
These inexplicable lights in the sky also drew a few unwelcome visitors to the West Virginia town. That spring, Point Pleasant locals began to see an odd assortment of outsiders in town, dressed in black.
They would stand up against the wall on Main Street and just stare. I seen them myself. We thought they were government. I think most of us did. At that time, I thought, they're government and they're put here to watch people. And I couldn't figure out what was they watching.
Some say the so-called men in black are government agents. Others insist they aren't really human.
I just thought they were going to pick somebody and then interview them or talk to them, ask them questions.
One they seemed to have picked was local reporter Mary Hire.
Mary Hire was working late in her office one evening. A man came in that was acting very strange.
Small man, very odd built with glasses.
What can I help you with?
Very creepy acting.
Listen, Mary, what would you do if someone told you to stop writing about those UFOs?
I tell him to go to hell.
Stay away from John Keel. He's a fraud.
The man tried to discredit John, that he was a liar, or he wasn't what he seemed to be, or what he told her he was.
Get out of my office!
She was a little scared to be in the office by herself after that. She kept the office locked. They intimidated her, but they didn't.
Mary did not stop reporting. She kept going for the simple fact that she knew that something was going on, and she was going to get to the bottom of it.
Failing to intimidate Mary, the men in black paid a terrifying visit to her niece, Christine.
You had these MIBs who were coming around, and right away it escalated to this is not going to be a kind of pleasant experience anymore.
I said that ain't nowhere near here. You need to let go of me. Let go of me.
Point Pleasant, West Virginia. In 1967, a series of strange supernatural events unfolded.
In that town, a lot of people were very scared. They wanted to know when the Mothman was going to reappear. Was it going to chase my car?
Many residents were certain extraterrestrial visitors were watching from above. Then, an even more sinister presence invaded on the ground. Author John Keel and local reporter Mary Hyre teamed up to investigate. But by the spring of 1967, the investigators were growing paranoid. Especially when mysterious men in black tried to kidnap Mary Hyre's niece.
Miss. Excuse me, miss.
A black Cadillac pulled up with a man inside that was dressed in a black suit. The man in the car asked for directions to lure her closer to the vehicle.
I said that ain't nowhere near here. You need to let go of me. Let go of me.
She was very frantic. It really traumatized her. She actually hid in her bedroom, and she didn't know if this man had followed her or not. There was a note that was slid under the door.
Was the note a warning directed at John Keel and Mary Hyre's investigation?
She was Mary Hyre's niece. That could have been used as a way to persuade Mary not to look into the case any further.
During John's investigations, after the Mothman sightings, there were sightings of men in black, there were disappearances. He was kind of like looking over his shoulder and wondering if that car that's going through town is somebody investigating him. He was a little paranoid.
In the summer of 1967, John Keel returned to New York, yet the mysteries of Point Pleasant continued to haunt him.
It really took a turn when John began getting messages from various entities that claimed that they could foresee the future and they wanted to warn him. He felt physically endangered because there were times when these men in black would start following him.
Have a pleasant evening.
At the same time, as this is happening, a situation at John's house is going crazy. The phone will ring, he'll pick it up. He'll hear bizarre, high-pitched noises. So John became convinced that his phone was being tapped. He actually was able to convince New York Telephone Company
Who is this?
to let him go to the main station and trace his line.
Do you hear me? Stop it!
He was a targeted individual for harassment. It was almost like they were trying to rob him of his sanity or sleep or something to discredit him as an investigator.
He seemed to think that somehow this phenomena was keeping tabs on him and may even put his life in jeopardy. So he really, I don't think he was being paranoid. I think he was just really frightened.
For John Keel, the dots were becoming aligned. All the signs pointing to deadly trouble ahead.
Mary and John got a feeling something awful was going to happen. Was it going to be an electrical disruption? Was it going to be a factory exploding? Was it going to be the death of somebody? They really didn't know.
But I suspected they knew what I knew, that something was going to happen. I didn't know it was the bridge.
In 1967, journalist John Keel had spent nearly a year traveling to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. An entire town wrapped up in a real-life nightmare. Animal mutilations, UFO sightings, mysterious men in black, and strangest of all, a menacing monster known as Mothman.
Paranormal panic occurred within the town. You would have people seeing things inside of their bedrooms, and then the figure would vanish. You would have people hearing things. It just seems like that it continued to get weirder and weirder and weirder.
As John Keel would write, all the eyewitness testimony was boggling my much boggled mind. Worse still, John felt certain it was leading to some dire conclusion.
I was planning to go back down to West Virginia in December of that year.
Who is this?
And I had repeated phone calls warning me, don't go.
Stop calling me. Do you hear me? Stop it!
In West Virginia, Keel's investigative partner, Mary Heyer, was receiving her own prophetic warnings.
In the fall of 1967, she would tell me about having dreams, and they were fairly frequent, about a baby crying. She would wake me up. Did you hear that baby crying? It was at the end of the bed. And I would say no. And she was like, wow, it's just really real.
Mary started having nightmares about this awful thing happening. She saw Christmas packages floating in the Ohio River. And she's the one that got closest to really predicting it.
On December 15th, 1967, John Keel was still in New York City. He believed the danger had shifted from Point Pleasant to Washington, D.C.
I can't believe you're serious about this. Nothing's gonna happen.
Listen, I know how this looks, Joe. Please, keep the flashlights ready.
John had actually gotten a tip from a man in black that when the White House Christmas tree was lit, that there would be a blackout on the East Coast. So he was home and he was watching for that.
Here comes the president.
God help us.
Johnson hits the switch, and nothing happens. And John is great. That's fantastic.
Oh, my goodness, Joe.
I told you we'll be fine.
And then there's a crawl on the bottom of the screen.
We interrupt this program for a special bulletin. A bridge laden with rush hour traffic has just collapsed at Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
In Point Pleasant, the nightmare was only getting worse.
It's Silver Bridge.
Mary. By 5 p.m. that evening, the Silver Bridge at Point Pleasant was jammed with rush hour traffic. Many families were taking care of Christmas shopping across the river.
What occurred is at one end, the red light froze. At the other end, there was also red light. So the bridge started filling with cars that could not move. And all of a sudden, I-bar number 13 broke, and the bridge collapsed.
There was a huge boom.
Lights flickered, the TV went off.
And a lot of people said they thought one of the power plants had exploded.
The bridge fell. I just remember me and my mom crying horribly because we thought Mary was on it.
My mother was right beside the bridge the day it fell, and when she ran out through the flood wall, she told me all she could see were cars and Christmas gifts floating in the river.
Mary had a dream a week before this of Christmas gifts bobbing in the water. And that's exactly what happened.
46 people perished in the icy waters beneath the ruins of the Silver Bridge. The worst bridge collapse in U.S. history.
One car had a mother and her 2 children in it. One 6-year-old little girl was never found. The body was never retrieved. It was just hard to talk about it. It's just so sad.
Engineers blame the bridge collapse on the failure of a single eye-bar in a suspension chain. Others suspected the cause may have been supernatural.
People thought that they had seen the Mothman go over the bridge before it collapsed.
This is what the warnings were about. A lot of people say the Mothman was here to warn us about the bridge.
John felt just horrified, and I think in some respects maybe even blamed himself that he couldn't have anticipated that.
John Keel and Mary Hire remained friends and continued to correspond until her death in February 1970.
13 months to the exact day after that incident, Mary Hire died of a mysterious illness. I think the timing is interesting. 13 months after the sighting, I-bar 13 breaking. 13 months later, Mary Hire definitely dies.
I really, in my heart, believe Mary was scared to death, frightened to death, because she didn't live very long. She was only 56 when she died, and it had something to do with this.
What John Keel began searching for in Point Pleasant, others have come along to investigate. Now, one man has proof. Mothman never went away.
It was a black silhouette, very thin. It just started coming right for me.
For many in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the mystery of Mothman ended abruptly on December 15th, 1967, when the Silver Bridge collapsed, killing 46. Decades later, new sightings and encounters continue to take place.
One of the misconceptions is that after the collapse of the bridge, all of the Mothman sightings stopped, and that's definitely not true. There's 1 or 2 sightings every few months. People are still seeing something there.
Andy Colvin grew up in Point Pleasant, hearing the legend of Mothman. At the age of 7, from the back of the family station wagon, Andy caught a glimpse of the strange winged phantom. He never forgot it.
When I was a child, we didn't call it Mothman, we called it the bird. And then in 1993, I saw this book by John Keel, Mothman Prophecies. I was like, what is this? And I read it. I'm like, well, that's the bird. He's writing about the bird, and it just blew me away. And I really started becoming more interested in the topic then.
Recently, Andy and 2 friends went back to Point Pleasant to investigate the truth.
We felt the pressure change. The crickets stopped chirping. It felt very cold. This was a 90-plus degree night. Suddenly we're shivering.
Out of nowhere, a curtain of light began to form.
That's when we saw a shimmering curtain. It's coming to you. You feel like you're being drawn to it by a vacuum. We saw shimmering, wispy beings in front of us in this curtain, this shimmering curtain, examining us from every angle.
Then, from the light, came a monstrous shape.
It seemed like it was growing wings. It was this black silhouette, the same one I had seen years before. And I got the feeling that this was Mothman observing us. I suggested that we not try to think anything. Don't think negative thoughts, don't be afraid. Try not to be afraid. Clear your mind. Maybe this thing reacts to what you're thinking. Maybe if you don't fear it, it won't fear you, and it may not harm you.
Andy Colvin saw only one way out, through the veil.
And I decided I could take that chance and walk into it, because I really felt like this is probably the only chance I'm going to get in my life to do this. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering, is this how people disappear? It's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. Absolute fear. It's almost bringing tears to my eyes because it was that scary. Somehow I was able to do it and survive, and I feel very lucky. I think the best explanation for Mothman, just as a working premise, is that he may be a thunderbird in the Native American tradition. In those traditions, people that see the Mothman, they are considered to be blessed. It could be that we're looking at a force here that's so close to the source of reality that it doesn't, that the ideas about good and evil don't really fit it.
There's many theories about what the Mothman actually was. Was he some type of ancient being? Some type of creature from another planet? Or something that's ancient that we may not understand that may exist in another dimension?
For the rest of his life, John Keel struggled to make sense of the 13 months he spent in Point Pleasant. His research would turn into a best-selling account of the events, one of the single most popular books ever to explore the unexplained. Keel dedicated the book to Mary Hyre and the people of West Virginia. John Keel's attempt to understand the monsters that plague Point Pleasant has inspired countless others to conduct their own search for hidden truths.
The unknown is out there. The universe does not exist as we think it exists. And we don't exist as we think we exist.